Hello, students. Welcome back to another class of business studies. I'm Neeta Biju. We have already completed the two chapters. Now we are starting with the third chapter, that is private, public, and global enterprises. So we are starting with a new chapter. So, first and foremost, we should know a brief introduction about the sectors, that is private and public sectors. So, here we have actually public and private sectors which we are going to study mainly. So these are all the kinds of business organizations. It may be small or it may be huge or it may be industrial or it may be in trading, that is buying and selling of goods and services. It may be privately owned or it may be government owned, or it can be existing any sort of company it can be in our country. So these organizations will actually affect the economic life and operations of our country, and that is why it affects too much the Indian economy. So this public sector and private sector will affect the Indian economy. So since it affects the Indian economy, and as you already know that Indian economy consists of both privately owned and government owned business enterprises. So that is why it is known as a mixed economy. So the government of India has opted for mixed economy because both private sector as well as government enterprises are allowed to carry on their businesses and trade. So the economy is actually mixed economy. So this is what we're going to study in this chapter about different types of private sectors, which we have already studied in our previous class, and the public sectors. So I'll make it clear here. The Indian economy consists of both privately owned and government owned business enterprises, and therefore it is known as a mixed economy because both privately owned people, individuals also can own it, and the government, it may be state government or even the central government, any person wholly or partially can own this sector, that is in the Indian economy, and everybody can operate their business. So this is what is a mixed economy. So Indian economy may be classified into two sectors, mainly the private sector and the second one is the public sector. So this private sector we are already very familiar with. So what is this private sector? The private sector consists of business owned by individuals or a group of individuals. For example, we have already studied in our previous class the forms of business organization: the sole proprietorship, one person; partnership, two or more person; joint Hindu family, the joint family system or business; ancestral business; cooperative society; and company. So these are privately owned by individual or group of individuals. So private sector consists of business owned by individuals, by one person or two or more person, or by a group of people, and it is already taught to you in the previous class. So the various forms of business organizations, as we have already studied, is sole proprietorship, partnership, Hindu undivided family or joint Hindu family system, and cooperative society and company. Now we'll go to the public sector. So the public sector consists of various organizations owned and managed by the government. These organizations may either be partly or wholly owned by the central or state government. They may also be a part of the ministry or come into existence by the special act of the parliament. The government through these enterprises participates in the economic activities of the country. So public sector is mainly of the government. It can be by the state government or it can be by the central government. It can be wholly owned by the state or central government, or it can be partially owned by the state or central government. It can be also different types, like formed by the ministry. Minister is the head of some department, we'll study in a later classes, and then it may be formed by the special act passed in the parliament as well. So these are the things or enterprises in public sector which is formed and which is actually owned, managed and controlled by the government. It can be state or it can be central. Again I repeat, it can be wholly owned by the central or state, or it can be partly owned by the central or state government. So this is what is public sector enterprise. So we have these forms of public sector enterprise. Since we have already studied the private sector enterprises in our previous chapter, now we'll study the forms of organizing or organization in public sector enterprise. So the first one is departmental undertaking, the second one is statutory corporation, and the third one is government company. I repeat, the forms of public sector enterprise here is departmental undertaking, statutory corporation, and government company. These are the main three types of public enterprise. So this chart will make it very clear the forms of sectors we have in our Indian economy. We can see that our Indian economy is divided into two parts. We have two main branches, that is public sector and the private sector. So public sector, what we got to study is the departmental undertaking, the statutory corporation, and the government company. I repeat, the public sector, we have three forms or types, that is departmental undertaking, statutory corporation, and government company, which we will be studying in our later class, in our next class, the features, the merits as well as demerits. And the next branch of Indian economy is the private sector, wherein we have already studied the sole proprietorship, we have studied partnership, we have studied joint Hindu family, cooperative society, we have also studied the company, that is public company and the private limited company. What we got to study in this chapter is again the multinational corporations. So in this chapter we will be studying what is public sector forms, that is departmental undertaking with its features, merits and demerits, statutory corporation and government companies with its features, merits and demerits, and we'll also study about the multinational corporation, because the rest of the private sector is already taught to you in a previous class. So this is all for today's class, dear students. I hope you have understood. We'll continue in our next class. Thank you.